Okay, so we're together again.
Yes.
But what we're doing here is the intro for our discussion on
Art.
On
A while
art,
ago,
yeah.
we did a conversation about art. It was meant to be short, but it turned out to be a little longer than we were expecting it
Right.
to be. So we just wanted to, briefly introduce it to you and let you feel it. So once again, if you have any comments or if you want to like or subscribe or whatever, we appreciate any interactions you might have. So without further ado, I think we'd like to introduce you to our take on modern art.
yeah. Is it art? Is it not art? Jackson Pollock. Is he art? Is he not art? We'll see.
William Carlos Williams.
Mhm.
That was part of, remember we were talking about indoctrination or whatever? I think that was part of it. William Carlos Williams was required reading.
So much depends upon a red wheelbarrow glazed with rainwater beside the white chickens.
And while I did find the whole, ate your plums out of the refrigerator note, I thought that was an interesting piece. I don't think William Carlos Williams was worth study. I really don't.
Well, why is that indoctrination, though? What is it about him that's indoctrinating?
I think that there was a, I don't know what you call it, like an iconoclast idea of art. They kind of destroyed the classics, and you started seeing things like, Jackson Pollock and stuff like that as being avant-garde, the cool
Right.
art,
Right.
And I think E.E. Cummings and William Carlos Williams, I think that's just along those same lines. I mean, there's nothing particularly poetic about the Red Wheelbarrow.
Right.
In fact, there's nothing even interesting about the Red Wheelbarrow.
Well, we talk about it all the time, so there's got to be interest somewhere.
Okay,
Even
we
if
talk
it's
about it all.
simplicity.
We talk about it all the time because it's a shared experience that we have where we can mock the modern version of poetry. I don't think either of us have gotten anything out of it, beyond that. Certainly nothing as deep as any of our English teachers might have,
Right.
might have gotten out of it or thought they got out of it.
Maya Angelou.
Just like suns and like moons, with the certainty of tides, just like hope springing high, still I rise.
Do you like her poems?
No. I'm going to say no.
Okay.
I honestly, I don't know that much about Maya. I read her stuff when it was forced upon me in college, and after that, I think I promptly forgotten most of it.
Yeah.
I enjoy. No, I can't really say.
Okay.
Maya Angelou. I can't.
Okay.
Can't even name one of her poems.
Well, I think it's difficult because people are just not exposed to poetry post Robert Frost, really. I mean,
Two roads diverged in a wood, and I took the one less traveled by, and that has made all the difference.
Yeah, well, post Robert Frost, there isn't really that much to say.
well, you think that, but that's because we're pretty ignorant of modern poetry, right? I mean,
No, far from it.
really, you've read like the most recent poet laureates.
That would be Poets Laureate.
Yeah,
and
whatever.
I do occasionally pick up the they have anthologies that come out every year, from various colleges and stuff like that. And I occasionally pick those up and read them. And there are some interesting passages, interesting things that have been written.
Right.
But I don't know that it necessarily rises to the level of art. You know? Just putting together like really, well thought out lines on a page doesn't always equal poetry. Sometimes, I mean, it doesn't. I don't think that poetry necessarily has to rhyme. I don't think it necessarily has to follow a particular meter. But when somebody is writing a poem about, a cold pillow and, unused condoms in the nightstand, is that poetry, really?
Well, so we have to define it, right? I mean, this is what's difficult about modern art, like contemporary art. Right?
That's what I'm talking about. That's what they destroyed, was the definition of it. So how would you define any art form, really?
It's really difficult, man. I mean,
Should it be?
Coming from, the art world in music. Mm-hmm. Like somebody could listen to Philip Glass, and say, well, there's nothing artistic about it, right? Schoenberg, and somebody would say,
is that 12 tone?
12 tone, right? And somebody will say, well, there's really nothing artistic about it, but it's artistic because it's not pop, and we all know it's not pop, right? And it's never been done. So first we have to kind of identify what is music, right? So if we agree that music is any kind of organized sound, so what's the difference between noise and music? Well, noise is not organized. Sound is organized. I mean, music is organized.
Yes, but by that rationale, the sound of a V-twin Harley could theoretically be music because it is with intentionality. They wanted to trademark the sound, as a matter of fact.
Well, but it has to be intentional as a piece of music, right? I mean, that's sound, right? They want to create a certain kind of sound, but it is obvious.
Obviously, they wanted to create a particular rhythm to the sound. It's not just sound.
Well, okay, but the rhythm isn't always the same depending on the RPM, right? I mean, it wouldn't sound the same. It's not intended. It's not organized as music. It's not intended to be music. Now, if you were to say take a bunch of those and then decide to put it in a certain run a couple or 3 or 4 of them at different RPM, and they have a different at different RPM. Presumably, they would be at different pitches. And clearly the rhythm would be different. And then you could say that that's music because it's organized to be musical. So
it seems like a fairly loose definition.
Well, it is. It's very loose. So music is any kind of organized sound. That's music, right?
Okay, but then you also ruled out pop. So,
No, okay. So what I'm saying is, so you define music, and then there's different genres of music, right? So there is pop music, and we know what pop music sounds like. And
there's reggaeton.
There's what?
Reggaeton.
What is that?
Reggaeton. Cumbia.
Okay, right. So we know what pop music sounds like, right?
Okay.
So anything that is not pop, you have to consider some kind of art music, right?
I guess I don't know. I mean, I
I
guess
mean,
I usually just defer to your judgment when it comes to the music thing.
so it
Uh,
should is shouldn't it be the same with visual art?
no, I don't think it should be the same with any art. To be honest with you, I mean, I don't think that. Uh, Like I don't think just because you slap some color on a canvas, you call that art. I mean I
Well,
don't have to agree. I mean,
well, you don't.
uh, you
Okay,
call yourself an artist. I mean, where's the
okay.
shouldn't there be some training? Shouldn't there be some investment? Shouldn't it truly communicate whatever it is you're trying to communicate? I mean,
So
does
okay, so I think that you're kind of conflating a few things. Okay, if somebody says, okay, I'm going to take crayon and I'm going to paint on a wall, or I'm going to draw all over a wall, and I'm going to say that's my art piece, that's art, right? It doesn't. There's a difference between whether something is art and not art, and whether something is successful in its artistry or not, right? I mean, you can look at like scribbles on a wall, and somebody will say, "Well, I'm creating a piece of art," and you could say that's just not very good, or it's not very successful. That doesn't make it not art, right? That just makes it not very good or not very successful. It's the same with music. I mean, I can
no?
create music, but
I
you could.
disagree. I disagree. I disagree. Just because you intend for it to be art, I don't think that makes it art. You could intend lots of things and fail miserably. That doesn't make it a success.
So, well, that's what I'm saying. I mean, now you and I can disagree on this, but I believe that, if you go out to create art, it's art. That doesn't mean it's any good. It doesn't mean that it's successful. Like if your purpose is to go out and convey something and it's just like a couple circles on a piece of paper, I mean, that's not successful. I mean, but it's still art.
No.
So if my daughter,
I think us just laying that label of art on anything that attempts an attempt at art shouldn't be labeled as art, or there's art ceases to have meaning. The word ceases to have any meaning. I think that there should be already some level of success, level of magnitude, level of talent, level of expression
okay,
that shows up in this work. And if it's not there, it's not art. It's not just bad
so
art. It's just not art.
so then what would you call it? Like Jackson Pollock, you don't like it, right? You think it's junk, basically. What would you call it?
Yeah, I would call it crap. I would
Right,
call
but
it
that's not
crap and a
that's
waste of time.
okay, but see, that's like you're putting like opinion on it. There has to be some kind of
Oh, yeah, but that's
subjective
okay
term,
because
right? That has to
there
be
is there is
of what
nothing
it is.
objective about it. I mean, everybody that intends to do something artistic is an artist, and everything that they do is art, good or bad. Somewhere along the line, there's got to be some opinion. I mean, it's not
Right. The opinion
if
is whether it's good or
it's
not.
expressing the human condition. If that's the case, then it's inherently subjective.
That's right. I'm not disagreeing with that. My point is what do you call it? If I went, like I said, if Jackson Pollock, he
Hmm.
spent time on it, and he there's purpose to what he did. Okay, you don't like it. Okay, but and you don't want that those pieces to be labeled art. What would you label it? What is it? I mean, you can say, well, it's crap. Okay, but that's not a label. That's an opinion. Because there are a lot of
Okay.
people out there who will say, well, I'm neutral to it, or I
Okay. Well,
think it's great,
if
or
you go into your kid's room and you found that they have scribbled all over the walls,
hmm
and they're very proud of this,
right.
do you call it art?
If that's their intention, yes, I would call it art.
You
I
would call it art.
I would say don't do that because it doesn't look very good. But if that's their intention, is to create
Really,
some
that's
kind
it? That's the max punishment? Please don't do that. You don't want to stifle their creativity, I suppose.
That's the max punishment. What do I do? I mean, if they do it again, then there's more punishment because I don't want them to scribble on the walls. You know what I would probably do is say, okay, if you need to have a outlet for your artistry, then why do we do this? I'll make one wall, a certain color, and you can just draw all over that wall. If it gets to that level, most of the time you can tell your kids, hey, you know what, you're going to get a spanking if you do that again, and they'll stop doing it, right?
Yeah, and I think somebody should have said that to Jackson Pollock.
You're not going to like this, okay?
Okay.
You're not going to like this. I actually like Jackson Pollock.
Good Lord, why? We're not friends anymore. And you like William Carlos Williams, you like E. Cummings.
No, I didn't say I like either of those
the
guys.
art world. Are you a big fan of Philip Glass?
I'm not a huge fan. It's interesting. But
A couple of pieces that I would say are halfway interesting, but I couldn't sit through the whole damn thing.
No, it's difficult. It's difficult.
But in the same, or at least they keep wanting to put him in the same vein as John Adams, and
Right.
Honestly, I love it. And we walked out when we saw John Adams just actually, conducting his own work there in
Which
Seattle.
one? The short ride in a fast machine?
Riding a Fast Machine. It wasn't that
Yeah.
piece, though. I think
Okay.
it was one about Oppenheimer, Dr.
Oh.
Atomic, or something like that. Anyway, so he did his piece and everything like that, and I came out and I'm like levitating off the ground. I'm just
Right.
so like stoked with the whole thing. It was just
Right.
really a phenomenal experience.
Right.
And I hear behind us this old couple, and they are just trashing it. I mean, they're just thinking it's horrible, and they're like, "Why didn't we just listen to some, Mozart?" Or I'm like,
Right.
"Mozart,
Right.
Mozart, that guy." But I
But
mean,
see
I guess
what I
that's
mean?
just how it goes,
But see what I mean?
Yeah, but I would say that there is more. There's more to be drawn from John Adams
Right, but-
than 12-tone. What'd you call him? Schaffenheimer,
Schoenberg.
Schoenberg. Yeah.
Okay. Who's the arbiter? See, that's the problem. When you start saying, well, some of it is art, some of it's not art, some of it is just crap, that's going to be the term
Okay,
we're
well,
going to use. Is crap.
who was the
we got
arbiter
art, and we
before-
got crap.
Who was the arbiter prior to Monet? Prior to the Impressionists? Who was the arbiter?
I don't think
Who
there-
decided what was art and what was not art?
I think it's this. I think it's always been the same, where people say, "Well, you know what? There's good art and there's bad art." There's some people who think they're artists and it's just crap. It looks like junk, but that doesn't mean they're not an artist. It doesn't mean they're not what they're doing is not art. It's just not very good.
There was a I don't want to say a guild, but there was that sort of a setup where you took an apprenticeship, you learned from the masters, and
Right.
when you were good enough, you moved on to your own thing, and you did it your own way. And then all the masters, of course, hated you, but at least you grew out of something, right? You were trained and guided, and you gathered these things, and you were a craftsman. And that was true of poetry. That was true of art. That was true of sculpture. That was true of music. Anything that could be considered an art form, it was that way. And it's not anymore. Now it's just anybody that wants to, throw a crucifix in a toilet, and now all of a sudden that's art. I mean, it's ridiculous on its face.
But how do you know that Jackson Pollock didn't start that way?
Well, honestly, I don't know enough about Jackson Pollock. There was a movie, but I was so disgusted by people calling Lavender Mist anything worthy of study or even note that I did not want to even see that movie. I really didn't, you know. But I'll tell you, the early ones that took it in that direction, people like Pablo Picasso.
Right.
You know, you look at some of Picasso's stuff and you're just like, well, that's just really terrible. But the guy was a formerly trained artist.
Okay.
He could perform. I don't know if you've ever seen his painting of the First Communion.
Yes.
Beautiful.
Right.
Masterwork. It was phenomenal. So the guy could do something and chose to express it in a different way. So whether I agree that it was good or bad, the decisions that he made, at least you could easily look to his body of work and say the man was an artist. You know?
Okay. But again, so see, it's getting more cloudy now, right? Because now it sounds like you're saying, well, if somebody creates something that is clearly not art, but they're an artist, then their stuff has merit all of a sudden? You know, I mean...
No, not necessarily, I mean, no. You know, just because you were an artist and all of a sudden, you know, you take a dump in a toilet, that doesn't make it art, okay? I saw art that was done by a guy who sat in paint, naked, and then made tulips with his butt cheeks.
Okay.
With his junk making the, you know...
the stem.
Yeah.
Okay.
It's not art. No matter how well the guy was able to paint with any other part of his body,
but
putting paint on a canvas with your ass does not make you an artist, okay? And that's what we need to fight against. Somehow, some way, we need to get control of our art, of our culture, and bring it back to something that can actually be pointed at and say, yes, this is one of the greats, you know, rather than, oh, look at this guy's ass. He did one in purple and he did another one in spring green.
Okay, so again, I think you and I, our argument is sort of semantic, because I agree with you. I don't think that that's valuable, right? I don't think that that's valuable.
Okay.
Nor do I think it's successful.
I think we're there. I think we're there. Mm-hmm. I think that in order to be art, it has to have value.
No,
it has to be valuable.
I totally disagree. Of course
you do.
Because somebody could just go out there and just, like, I can go, you know what, I'm just going to go and paint a landscape just because I think the landscape looks good.
Uh-huh.
You know, and that's it. You know, or
okay.
I'm going to, you know, so you're saying the value is the fact that that it's pretty? There's nothing like extra involved there.
The aesthetics of the thing is not the takeaway. If you go out and train yourself up, you know, I don't want to say a master, but you even go to a class or whatever, and get the skills requisite of a painter, right? And go out there and paint a decent landscape, a good-looking painting. I would call that bad art. Okay, at least it was artistic. At least it had some sort of expression, some sort of training. And I would say that was bad art. That was really bad art. Splattering on a canvas, that doesn't rise to the level of art. Okay, I would call it paint splattered on a canvas is what I would call it.
What about street art? People who it's graffiti, but it looks good, and there's no other purpose to it other than, and they haven't had any formal training most of the time,
Right. I would say that again, most of that would be considered, I would say, bad art, because even though they didn't have formal training in like a classroom setting, they did have training. Somebody did show them how to do that, what they do. They
Okay.
don't typically just jump up and do it. And the ones that can, I mean, there's some performance involved. The ones that I've seen on the street, it's a show watching them create these things. And does it express anything? Does it add cultural value? Mostly no, I would say, as far as the piece itself. But the performance, I think, is of greater value. But that gets into the idea of, that's along the lines of pop. We're
Right.
talking about, when we're talking about pop art, pop
Right.
pop music.
So, what's his name? Pop art guy. What's his name?
Liechtenstein,
No. No. The guy, what's his name? Warhol.
Warhol.
Do you consider any of his stuff art?
Do I consider it art?
Yeah. Campbell's
Yeah,
soup can.
honestly, I would say that because you could see some skill in the craftsmanship, and it was an interesting idea to paint something that was so familiar, and make it so big, kind of amplify it or whatever. I would say that was pop art. I wouldn't think that should really be, like, I don't think that's the biggest value to the culture.
Photographs.
Photographs.
Is that art? Yeah, photographs. Is that art?
Yes, there is definitely people who have talent. There's definitely composition involved. You can definitely tell the difference between a mediocre photographer and someone who's
Right.
very
Again,
good.
again, there's a difference between a good photographer and a bad photographer, right? But if somebody's taking the same landscape, exact same landscape, and one's an amateur and one's a professional, they take a picture, and there's some slight difference, clearly. The guy who is just an amateur photographer, is that what he created isn't art?
It doesn't necessarily rise to the level of art, but we'll have to look at the picture. Your individual. I mean,
So
if
art-
it's just
art is
like
subjective,
if
is
I'm
what
going
you're
to do
saying.
like Ansel Adams, just go out there and shoot a black and white picture
Right.
of the painted desert, that doesn't make me an artist. Okay,
So-
it doesn't.
So art definitively is subjective, is what you're saying.
No, I don't think art is definitively subjective at all. I just said, all the stuff you were talking about, but I just think it has to add value. If it adds, and I'm not talking about like, dollar value. I'm talking about cultural value. If you're not adding anything to the, to the human experience, if you're not expressing something that's not really been expressed before, if you're not touching all of those things, I don't think that's art. I think just because you have a paintbrush in your hand does not make you an artist.
So again, we're going back to the Pollock thing because that's how we started.
Yeah.
You don't like Pollock. I like Pollock.
Okay.
So it's okay for me to call it art, or is it not? Or am I just wrong by calling it art since I like it? And I
You're
think
wrong. You're wrong
it
for
adds
liking
value.
it. You're wrong for calling it.
Great.
Absolutely.
Well, I guess I'm just kind of like an egalitarian kind of guy then, because you know what, man? To me, it's way simpler to say, you know what? It's all art. Okay? It's just, some of it just isn't valuable. It's just not, it's most of it, 99% of art is just throwaway. I mean, the stuff that my kids do at school, they call it art. It's art class. They call it art. But most of it, 99.9% of it is just junk. You just throw it away. It goes away. It's gone. Bye-bye.
Oh, I can't wait to share this with the girls.
I'm
Your
just
dad
saying.
said all that
that's,
you do is crap.
that's true, though, right? It's not just my kids. It's everyone, all the kids. And yet they want to call it art. So how does that jive? I mean, is that wrong to call that art?
Does it make you happy if I just say everything's art?
Well, I'm sure it would make you happy if I agreed with you.
Well, I don't. I just think that you're taking away. You're taking away something that is important to art, right? Yeah, just labeling everything art, everything's cool, and it's all subjective. I think that takes away from the craftsmanship that's involved in, or that was involved at one time in all of the arts. You know.
I get it, man. I understand. You want art to be. There has to be some depth to it. That's your thing, man. You know, you don't want it to just be some throwaway thing. You have to feel as though there's some kind of meaning to it, some kind of depth to it. I understand.
I don't know, man. If you go and go take a look at the Louvre or whatever, I mean, there is just some spectacular pieces of art in there.
Yeah, but I bet you there's a whole section of modern art in the Louvre. There's probably a whole wing of it. Am I right?
No, there's none of that crap in there. They got other museums, though.
What do you call that big pyramid thing in the front of it?
I call that an eyesore. Is exactly what that is.
They're the ones that put it there, right?
They're the ones that put it. It's horrible. It really is horrible. If you look at the rest of the Louvre, it's just a spectacular, just gorgeous building. It was a palace, for crying out loud. An honest to God palace. And then they put that stupid glass pyramid out there, and it's not even like squared off to everything else. It's dumb. It's horrible.
They're the experts, though, right? And they don't think it's horrible, right?
I don't care what they think. It is horrible.